So this is the 10th Digimon game I've reviewed across 8 different videos, and it's the second time I've come across a game that people seemed especially concerned about. Just like with my Digimon World 2 review, every time I talked about looking at Digimon World 4, I was greeted with messages of worry, of hatred, people sharing their dark memories of playing this game as kids, and after the struggle that I had with World 2, this one sort of felt like a dark creature just waiting in the corner for the day I'd have to face it. And coming right off the heels of Digimon World 3, I mean, I'm glad I took a breather with the GBA games, but I was a little hesitant to review another big, long, and difficult game when I'm still planning on reviewing another big RPG later this year. Was I getting in over my head? Should I try to go out of order and look at another smaller Digimon game first? No, I decided to stick to my guns now that I'm getting on track to review these games in release order, at least for the American releases. And besides, if this game really was so bad, maybe it would be a good idea to get it out of the way now, since most Digimon games that came out after this seem to have way better reputations. But even with Digimon World 2, it's not like I hated that game. I had issues with it. Like, a lot of them, but the joy of this job is not just finding and discussing the things that people didn't like, but finding the positive elements and bringing them to light as well, which brings us to an exciting question that I was wondering up until I put this disc in my system. Is this game really as bad as people make it sound? Well, today we're gonna answer that question. This is Digimon World 4. Like I mentioned before, I'm finally getting on track and looking at these things in the order they were released in. In fact, there was actually a weird gap between Digimon World 3 and Digimon World 4. The third World game was already pushing it a little, a PS1 RPG releasing in 2002, 2 years after the PlayStation 2 hit the market, and was already putting that title at a disadvantage. And after that, we started seeing more of these spin-offs, and Japan saw a bunch of handheld games too, but it wasn't until 2005 that Digimon fans were finally graced with the newest numbered entry in the Digimon World line of games. Would it return players to the intimate roots of the virtual pet adventure sim? How about refining the mystery dungeon crawling aspects of the second title? Maybe following up on Digimon World 3? That one seemed to really stick the landing, and it's not like turn-based RPGs with monster collecting elements were falling out of fashion just yet. Okay, I would argue the game that we're talking about today does kind of do one of those things I listed, but for the most part, this was once again another total genre shift for the series, and this time, Digimon World 4 went the route of an action RPG with some slight dungeon crawling elements. There's a lot going on with this one, and it's informed by more stuff than you might think, but I guess the best place to start is from the top. I really do think the green cases for the original Xbox look really nice with this era of Digimon box art. Match that with the fact that they're generally the most affordable versions while looking and playing just fine. I've come to really appreciate the 2 games from this franchise that wound up on this machine. Honestly, it really makes me wish they were more. That said, yeah, I'm sure there's something else pretty glaring in this box art. Weapons? That's a choice? Don't get me wrong, it's not like there aren't Digimon out there rocking some heavy-hitting artillery, and they're some of the best designs in the franchise, but they're usually in forms earned through Digivolution and are chosen to specifically cater to certain creatures. This is just grabbing a small dinosaur, ignoring its teeth and claws, and just acting like it's totally defenseless unless it grabs the biggest knife it can find in the kitchen. A lot about this game can be seen as synonymous with odd choices, but one of the strangest is that it is kind of adapting pre-existing material. Emphasis on kind of. Booting up the game, you'll see some animations, so a step up from Rumble Arena 2, which gave us nothing. But the CGI scenes you see here are not specifically made for this game. Rather, they're clips taken from a 3D animated movie called Digimon X Evolution, which was released only in Japan in January of 2005, just days before the Japanese release of Digimon World 4, and in turn, that movie is loosely based on a story called Digimon Chronicle, which was released as a mix of text and manga pages spread across the waves of a 2003 V-Pet toy called Digimon Pendulum X. These 3 stories are not all really directly part of the same narrative. X Evolution takes some notes from Digimon Chronicle, and World 4 kind of takes one or two ideas from X Evolution, but doesn't really commit to the insane ideas present in that material. The connections that Digimon World 4 shares with the stories of X Evolution and Digimon Chronicle are honestly pretty surface level, and the game doesn't really try to adapt the crazier stuff that those stories do. But I can't bring all that stuff up and not at least try to offer some context for the original narrative that this video game fails to capture. Okay, so imagine with me that the digital world has a deity, sort of a god to a limited degree, in the form of a server's host computer. In this version of the digital world, the host computer is known as Yggdrasil. At some point, the American name for this thing was changed to King Drasil, but that name sucks and stinks of cowardice, so we're gonna call him Yggdrasil in this house. Yggdrasil seems to think that the current state of the digital world is becoming overwhelmed by the sheer amount of Digimon that exist, so he decides to create a new Digimon server, pick out a group of Digimon that he wants to keep, and create something called the X virus that will wipe out the rest. Project ARC saw Yggdrasil taking his small pocket of chosen survivors to the new digital world, but there were some stowaways, as some Digimon that were marked for death developed a resistance to the virus in the form of the X antibody, leading to these Digimon getting these intense new designs. So yeah, this horrifying storyline of a god eradicating his subjects just because there were too many of them was all just a way to create a lore reason for new amped up Digimon designs to market. I'm leaving out a lot of factors here, and that's because there are some factors that change between the original Digimon Chronicle story and that of Digimon X Evolution. There's an added threat of something called the TheDigitalHazard.
Wait, what?
Nope, not that one. Yggdrasil sending out his royal knights comprised of powerful Digimon like Omnimon, Magnamon, and Gallantmon to take out the survivors that slipped through. Also, we could get a spikier Wargreymon. I'm not complaining about the story, by the way. I love how insane it is that something so dark was written to market a virtual pet toy, but even though Digimon World 4 doesn't adapt to more than one or two elements from these narratives, it still uses clips from the movie as its intro in a way that will probably make you expect a very different kind of adventure, and even uses renders from it all over the back of the box as if it's actually part of the game, and even uses some renders in the manual to straight up lie to you. Just flipping through the manual, I instantly got excited by the idea of playing as Omnimon in an action RPG like this, and yeah, guess who's not even in the game? I still thought it was a good idea to bring these details up though, because it was part of the marketing. Feigning connections to this storyline is part of this game's identity, and if it's going to use the presentation of that film as a mask, then I think it's worth pointing out the type of story it was pretending to have. Plus, Digimon World 4 is far from the last piece of media to adapt these story elements as parts of the anime, and even other games tackle ideas that were introduced in this little bit of lore made for the V-Pets back in 2003. But now, 4 pages into this script, I think it's high past time we started talking about what actually is in the game itself. Once we're past the intro movie, we're greeted with what might be one of my favorite title screens in Digimon's entire gaming library. It's not like it's very complex or technically impressive, but it does a lot with its simplicity. The opening animation is fluid, the logo and start prompt on the foreground fit cleanly against the moving background, and it feels like taking the menu from Rumble Arena 2 and adding a more calming and adventurous atmosphere to it with this fantastic piece of music. I've definitely spent a lot of time just listening to this song while working or drawing. It's so pleasant. I also love how the UI here uses sound effects from Digimon World 1, adding a little sense of cohesion here between titles and giving you that feeling that you're about to enter the digital world. Now, you'll notice here that when you go to create a profile, there are 4 slots open. Yes, just like the box art implies, this game is designed to allow you to play with up to 3 other people at once. But of course, you can play by yourself as well. For this particular playthrough, I kind of went back and forth on how I should go about tackling this adventure, but when I was really thinking about it, if I had grown up with this game, it would have been way more likely that I'd just be running through this adventure solo, but this was an experience where I felt like if I didn't talk about how multiplayer changes the way it feels, I wouldn't really be doing this review justice. So I will primarily be looking at this game from a single player perspective, but we will also be talking about the multiplayer aspects of the game too. I really can't ignore it for this video, but we'll get there when we get there. When you create your profile, you can choose between one of 4 starting Digimon: Agumon, Guilmon, Dorumon, and Vmon. You can choose whoever you want, and it doesn't have a massive effect on the gameplay in the grand scheme of things, but it does dictate what weapons your Digimon will be proficient in, what sort of magic abilities they can use, and what other Digimon they can Digivolve into. You know, for whatever the concept of Digivolving is worth in this game.
Let's get scratching.
I decided to roll with Dorumon for this playthrough, partially because he's a Digimon I don't think I ever really paid a whole lot of attention to before now, and I think it's sort of in the spirit of the franchise to give overlooked creatures a shot, but also because he was sort of the main character of X Evolution and it just felt appropriate to play as him here. I mean, Alphamon was there front and center in the intro, so I might as well try to get him. After starting, I was introduced to the Digi-Elves, a group of digital beings that work in the Digital World's defense network. This organization runs in a home server independent from the main areas of the digital world. After we speak with the commander Ophanimon, we learn that the different servers of the digital world have been separated from each other, and in their absence, a new server called Death Valley has appeared along with a wave of dark creatures carrying something called the X-Virus. There it is. That's almost all the in-game connection to the previous storylines as you're going to get. Ophanimon sent out a team led by Chief Leomon to investigate, but they haven't heard back from them, which, I mean, I can't imagine why. Leomon has a great track record of staying alive. We're sent out to go explore Death Valley and meet up with Leomon's team, and thus begins our adventure. Before we get to the first area proper, we're given a tutorial that runs us through the basics of combat. The first thing you learn is how to guard. Admittedly, that's something I'm really bad about in action games. Anyone that's tuned into my Elden Ring streams can tell you that, but I got a lot of use out of blocking in this game. It's very reliant on timing, as most blocking is really only going to be effective if you're hitting the button right before an enemy's attack connects. You don't just stay in a defensive stance forever, but successfully blocking an attack does seem to give you some decent invincibility frames. I found that in some portions of the game, when you're being bombarded with turrets and such, you can usually block one attack, ignore the next, and use the extra time to block for another incoming attack. Get the timing of certain attacks down and you can start to learn how to avoid taking damage from a lot of stuff. It takes practice, but don't you worry, this game is obsessed with making you do the same thing a nefarious amount of times over a longer period than you would expect, so you'll get all the practice you need and then some. You can also double tap the analog stick in a certain direction while pressing the block button to perform a slam attack. Basically just charging forward a bit, but I think it's supposed to help you get out of a tough spot if you're cornered. You can do this. I never did, but you can. Honestly, I don't even know why they have the word attack in the name. It's just a purely defensive move and doesn't deal any damage. You can also rotate the analog stick while pressing your basic attack button to perform a spiral attack. I guess this is a technique I got a little more use out of, but the recovery needed after doing this really just leaves your best attack option to be your default one. Hit the button, swing your weapon. Do that over and over until your enemy is dead. Trying to use the other techniques honestly feels pretty clumsy and not all that useful. Like, I can't think of many situations where the spiral attack really would come in handy, and it doesn't even feel very good to pull off. Now, one technique I did get more use out of is a charge dash you can pull off by holding down the attack button for a few seconds and releasing it to charge forward with a powerful blow. This isn't always the most effective way of dealing with enemies, but I find it's just a way more effective version of the slam attack, actually doing damage and can instantly destroy obstacles in the terrain like rocks or trees that are blocking your way. Once you've got the basics down, it's time to hop into Death Valley and see what happened to Leomon and his team. Actually, just after entering the area, you can find one of these exploration reports. Turns out, Chief Leomon left logs around the different areas he and his team were in, and by reading these, you can get an idea of what to expect in that location and get a little context for what this team was experiencing on their journey. Still, it's time to go off and do some exploring of your own. I'm not sure if this is a common consensus, but I actually really like how you can see the difference in terrain between the terminal where you enter the world and the more natural-looking environment of the area. I like the mist sweeping through the air, the suspended bridges, and decent use of color. You can still see remnants of circuitry and digital engineering even among the rocks and trees. I started my adventure the way so many classic RPGs have, by slaying goblins, or Goburimon to be specific. The process of fighting is very simple, all things considered. It's the sort of repetitive process of attacking, blocking, and running into the next area to do it all again that you would expect from a game like this. Every once in a while, you'll run into a stronger opponent like this Ogremon, and you'll need to focus a little more on defense or start taking advantage of whatever magic ability your Digimon has. Each starter Digimon has a different magic ability that they come equipped with. Vmon gets lightning, Guilmon and Agumon both get fire, and Darumon gets ice. One of the handy aspects of this ability is that it gives you a ranged attack option outside of the ranged weapons like a gun. Because yes, you can equip ranged weapons like firearms instead of relying solely on melee attacks. This, of course, opens up the door to the discussion of the different kinds of weapons that you can equip, the benefits of them, and how to obtain them. We're not ready for that discussion yet. Of course, in an action RPG like this, you're inevitably gonna take some hits, but that's where your recovery items come into play. Using the trigger buttons and D-pad, you can bring up and navigate these little menus that will display in real time and allow you to choose between healing items, magic recovery items, and other field items. Healing and magic replenishment discs each come in 3 variations, and each one will have a different level of effectiveness. To use these items, you'll press the left trigger to open up a menu and use the D-pad to navigate it, letting you select from your various available discs and using them to heal up or refill your magic. What's annoying is that the A button, or whatever your controller's main attack button is, becomes the selection button for your item menu anytime you have this menu open, but the menu doesn't just go away when you're done using an item. It's super easy to bring this menu up, press A to use a heal disc, mentally assume that the menu will close itself back out, and then accidentally hit A again to attack a nearby enemy, and instead just waste another heal disc and probably take a hit while you're at it. You need to actively press the trigger button again to disable the menu before your primary attack button regains its normal function. Now, if you're in a pinch and need to heal up ASAP, you can actually press Y to instantly use whatever your strongest healing item you're holding at the time is, which is super helpful if you're in a rough spot and need to patch up as quick as possible, as using the item menu does not pause the action around you. I found myself having to use it a few times when I had taken more hits than I'd realized and almost got taken out because I wasn't paying attention. But what happens if you happen to get knocked out while you're out on the field? You'll see this little capsule spawn where you died, holding whatever bits you had on you at the time, and will only remain there until you either recover it or die again. If you're in multiplayer, one of your buddies will need to run by with a revive disc, use it while standing near your capsule, and you'll be revived. If you're on your own though, you'll be booted to the main lobby, need to re-enter the domain you were in, and get all the way back to where you were downed and use a revive disc to get your money back and try not to die again along the way. I think the strangest main item at your disposal though is the gate disc. Throughout each area, you'll see these little force fields called security holes. Security holes are represented with this symbol on the ground that can be found in the overworld near the entrances to dungeons or in the middle of dungeons themselves. Use a gate disc on one of them and you'll be sent back to the main lobby for a chance to offload some items or equipment you picked up, swap your essentials, use this heal circle near the gates to instantly refill your HP and MP, purchase recovery items, and bank some money on items that you've accumulated. Once you want to return though, you have to make sure that you're not going back to that area through the main exit terminal, the gate circle, or it will send you back to the beginning spawn point of that area. You want to use the emergency gate, the terminal that you enter the main lobby from when you use the gate disc at a security hole in order to return to that security hole. Also, don't save and turn off the game thinking that you can load the game back up and you can just re-enter the emergency gate to return to wherever you were exploring the last time. This is super confusing to me because that seems like it would be the main benefit of a mechanic like this. Yeah, I've been running around through this area, exploring this dungeon, and I want to take a break for tonight and come back for this tomorrow. Sorry, but it just doesn't work like that. This is only here so you can go back to the main lobby to take care of a couple of things real quick and come right back. Otherwise, this would just be the baseline of convenience. And you can use gate discs anywhere else in the overworld to go right back to the main lobby, but you just won't go back through the emergency gate, so if you use a gate disc this way, you can get out of dangerous location or situation, but you'll have to return there the long way regardless. And I guess that gets us into how pacing and progression are handled in this game as a whole. The way gate discs, emergency discs, coming back into the game after shutting it off and then having to restart your progress in an area, the way it's all handled feels like it should be the recipe for a disaster, but is it really that harmful to the gameplay experience? Now we understand your base moveset and usage of things like items, but how do they tie into the game's overall structure? Towards the beginning of each area, you'll see a door locking off a section of that level, and you can only access it by running around to different dungeons in the overworld and fighting off bosses to collect keys that will let you access that final section. As you traverse the overworld, you'll face off against standard enemies with the roster changing from area to area. Deal with certain traps like boulders falling from above, or Numamon firing their brethren out of cannons at you, or poison swamps to impede your progress, and as you overcome each trial, you'll find dungeons. These will usually host several floors and start out pretty simple, but will eventually begin to test your mind over time with puzzles or interesting design choices. At the end of each one will be a boss fight, and when you beat it, you'll get an ID. This is really the main meat of the game. There's typically a bit of contrast between the overworld and the dungeons, with a more open-air feeling of the larger areas and a colder, more desolate feeling of the labyrinths that lie under the surface. Some of those dungeons do tend to feel pretty samey for the most part, which I do find a shame. There's moments where they feel more like a cave, a sand pit, something that ties it to the aesthetic of the main area it's connected to, but there's also a lot of just bland white hallways with the same obstacles and corridors we've seen in the last 3. I really wish there was a better sense of theming between them. Some of them feel unique, but most of them really would have benefited from being given a better sense of identity or purpose in the world. Give me more of those forest temple vibes, a complex power plants, ideas that the game toys with but doesn't really commit to. I do understand the appeal of having assets that can be used several times over. There are really only 4 main areas in the games, with the cliff sides of Death Valley, the sandy terrain of the dry land, the purple and green paths of the Venom Jungle, and the Machine Pit. The Machine Pit feels a lot more generic and is especially underwhelming as a final location, considering you see this exact aesthetic used earlier in the game for the main hub world that connects the optional areas. Given that a lot of the dungeons scattered throughout these main locations are not usually all that long on their own, and several of these domains need to be created for each central location, being able to reuse a pile of assets across them is an understandable benefit, but the sameness that they share does kind of diminish how interesting each encounter with a dungeon could be. You always know what enemies will be inside, you generally know what each room is going to look like, the only real surprises you get will be the boss fights at the end of dungeons, and the traps that will be there to evade, but after a bit, even those are kind of put on repeat, and the only difference is going to be the layout. Still, for the most part, the pacing isn't the worst. The majority of these dungeons don't tend to overstay their welcome, and there's plenty of other elements to keep you engaged as you move through each major area, collect keys, and move into the final area where you can battle the major boss. Even with the way the game essentially makes you re-enter an area fresh after turning the game off, as long as you save beforehand, you'll still hold on to your experience, levels, equipment, and the boss keys you've acquired up to that point. It's like your locations of interest are all stemming in different directions from the spawn point, so making your way back to where you were before can be slightly tedious at times, but never really to an excessive degree. As you make your way through the first area of Death Valley, you'll quickly see yourself power up, already feeling a sense of added strength as you complete your first major tasks. Run into your first dungeon, fight a Blossomon, get his ID, and return to base. Get yourself prepped up at the lobby to head back in to take on the next dungeon, beat the next boss, and get the next ID. You'll see your experience start to grow, watching your numbers rise along the way, watch enemies fall faster, and even start to see some mysterious creatures you don't recognize, ones that don't even seem to be Digimon at all, but all must be tied to the threat looming over the digital world and separating the servers from each other. With the IDs you've picked up from the bosses you've defeated, you can enter the guard room at the beginning of the valley, and this is where you find another one of those dark creatures, but this one is far more evolved and is treated like a more serious encounter. After defeating him, we find Chief Leomon, alive and well. Okay, maybe not well, but him still breathing at this point is surprising enough, and I'm really not sure he realizes just how lucky he is, but it does seem like the rest of his team was captured and he was infected with some sort of virus that's causing this voice in his head called the Mecha Rogue to start chiming in, trying to speak through him. So, naturally, we send him back to home base like it's nothing. I was expecting a legitimate follow-up to this too, but there really isn't one of any consequence. He mostly just has gaps in his memory, a few moments where he freaks out briefly, and a couple of little bits of info to share that he learned while he was imprisoned. After reporting to Ophanimon, we learn that the force that's been sweeping across the digital world, causing all this havoc and rewriting the digital data of the world we live in, is an entity known as the X-Virus. While the X-Virus in other media has primarily been depicted as something that sweeps through Digimon and either kills or alters them, here it seems like it's morphing the entire digital world into something more hostile and even manifesting itself into these dark purple creatures that we've started to encounter. We're given a boat key and sent out to go rescue the Digi-Elves that are still stuck out in Death Valley, and this introduces another interesting element. A couple, actually. To get out here, we need to go do a little platforming and get some use out of the jump button, have an overworld boss fight and fight another Blossomon, and then board the boat that will take us down Numamon River. Okay, so this is a section where you're automatically running down the current and need to defend yourself. You can't heal, you can't replenish magic, you need to equip a long-ranged weapon and avoid getting hit by enemies while also firing away at the trapped Digi-Elves who are being held captive along the river. You don't have to get them all in one go, you can try and retry this section, and the elves that you saved before don't need to be rescued again, but a couple of them are much harder to hit than others, especially when enemies keep spawning in your line of fire and it takes a few hits to actually be able to kill foes or free friends. All of this is made even worse by how equipment and skill leveling is handled, but again, we're not ready for that yet. Rescue the elves and enter the Dome Base. Fight through a fairly simple dungeon and encounter the main boss of Death Valley, Apocalypse. There's a couple of steps to this battle, first requiring you to destroy these totems around him before he can be harmed. He'll be hurling attacks at you, trying to knock you into an electrified floor. Once he's vulnerable, you'll need to stay on your toes as he throws a lot at you. You'll need to watch to see what attacks he's going to be throwing at you, their area of effect, and dodge oncoming fire while running in to deal damage where you can. It's actually a fairly engaging boss fight and even managed to take me out once. It's pretty fun to nail down and felt like a good test of my skills and reflexes, the sort of thing that you'd expect from a major boss battle. Just don't get used to it because the next two main boss fights after that suck. With Apocalypse defeated, we can return to the home server and report to Afanimon once again. We don't get far into our discussion before the entire place goes on red alert as it seems a huge wave of X-Virus monsters are attacking the home server, and we suddenly find ourselves needing to boost the base's defenses to keep it from falling prey to our enemies. You'd think that they would hold on to an event like this until later in the campaign, as it feels like a kind of big deal and you don't really get to see any visual representation of these attacks. You're just sort of told that it's happening with some sirens blaring in the background. We couldn't even dim the lights, maybe use some red flashing on the screen or something? Our task here is to just run around. We have to interact with a few specific terminals on computers to gain access to the security hall and activate the protection system to keep the X-Virus from breaking in. We talk to Seraphimon, who boosts the home server's defense systems, and Ophanimon sends us out to the dry land to locate mechanisms producing the ever-growing population of the X-Virus. This area is structured a lot like Death Valley, just with some more sand. You run around, find dungeons, fight enemies, take down bosses, get IDs, and move on. I do like what they did with some of the enemies here though. Mummymon are the main enemies you'll find sauntering around each area, and I really like that if they get hit with fire attacks, they'll stay ablaze and will hurt you if you get too close. Doesn't make a lot of sense that it doesn't hurt them too though, they're clearly not fire resistant. I also think the Minotaurmon are cool encounters because they're always in a room with some sort of pots that they'll run away to once they've been knocked down to about half health. Once they drink from the pot, they'll come back to fight you with more strength and aggression. Also, Tyrannomon is here. I like Tyrannomon. This area has another automated sequence not too dissimilar from the boat on Numamon River, but I actually do think that this one is a little more tolerable. It's not relying on you raising up skills on any particular type of weapons, as all of the enemies you have to worry about are coming right to you. The thing you have to pay attention to is the signpost that you need to hit that will change the rail that the cart you're riding on will follow. You need to make sure that you're following the right path and not just going around in circles to find your way to the power plant. With this destroyed, you can gain access to Station X where the X-Virus is being reproduced. You battle through the virus lab and encounter the second major boss fight, this time against Malomyotismon. This fight is a lot more annoying. I'm pretty sure the music track for this battle is just skipping over itself the entire time, and this guy spends a lot of time just floating around in the air where you can't hit him. There's not as much of the multitasking and reflex testing antics of the Apocalypse fight. This really is just a tedious affair of dodging some fairly simple attacks until he finally comes down to where you can hit him and get a couple of licks in before he just takes off into the air again. Way more irritating than what came before by a long shot. Unfortunately, while our leaders back at HQ were happy to see that we've halted the production of the virus, they don't seem to have much direction for us outside of that. I tried speaking to Leomon, but he wasn't really much help either. He's just hanging out over here speaking in typos. Okay, actually, after messing around for a little bit, we talked to Seraphimon again, and now he tells us to head off to the Venom Jungle, and I'm sure you couldn't help but notice that I am still a Dorumon. Going into the third area out of 4 that exist in the game, and I still haven't digivolved once. So I decided that now was probably a good time to look further into that and figure out how to achieve a higher form. And that's when we start getting into the more technical side of this game. The core structure is pretty simple. Actually, sitting down to put it into words in the script is when I realized just how straightforward it really is, but like I alluded to before, there's a lot of gears turning in this Digimon-infested clock, and that's where the really interesting discussion lies.
Let's get scratching.
As I was looking into how to obtain new Digivolutions, I discovered that the answer largely lies with interacting with the game's side content. If all you did in this game was run from point A to point B, show enemies your best impression of a meat grinder, and throw a bunch of keys into your home invasion collection, the main portion of this game would really only keep you playing for so long. The game's longevity comes from how it handles your character's stats, equipment, and how each affects each other. You've got a big old stats screen displaying a wide array of stats that will grow as you continue your adventure, and the stats that increase are based on how often you put that specific stat to use. use. As you scurry along through the overworld and defeat enemies, you'll sometimes see two different types of item drops: keychains and card booster packs. No, there's not any kind of competitive card game to learn in this title. This is really just here as a collectible. You can only carry 9 booster packs and keychains at a time before you need to return to home base and use them up. Speak to the card keeper Digi-Elf to open up your booster packs and see what you can find. I'm not much of a card game player, but I do love collecting them, so this was pretty much up my alley. I actually had quite a bit of fun getting new cards and filling out the old binder. Keychains will need to be taken to Prince Mamemon, who's hanging out in the server. Bring him 9 of them and he'll give you an item of some kind. Sadly, most of the time he just sort of gave me junk I couldn't use or had no use for, and I wound up selling it. I mean, you run into these things out in the overworld and you can get a little bit of money from what you get from them, but this didn't really feel like it was worth a lot of payoff here. It's especially weird that after a while, he just changes locations entirely, and I'm not sure if giving him enough keychains eventually winds up getting you something legitimately useful, but I offloaded keychains to him when I could regardless. Speaking of other key figures at the home base whose full utility is a bit unknown to me, there's a metal Enamon hanging out with the shop, and if you donate enough bits to him, he'll start to develop different levels of gear for you. I actually found this out pretty late into my playthrough though, and at that point, I really wasn't hunting for new equipment, so it just kind of felt whatever to me, but I'm sure it feels more useful if you're earlier in your adventure and need a steady flow of new items. One NPC that just feels really not as useful as he should be is this guy right here, the X-Data Keeper. Kind of like the other collectibles you can find, there's a rare chance that defeating enemies throughout the game will drop these little bits of X data. Oh, okay, so this must be where Digivolution comes in, right? Well, no. Really what this stuff does is act as a spendable form of experience, almost like a stat currency. As you find this stuff out in the overworld, it'll start to pool up in your inventory, and when you take it to the Data Keeper, you can use it to increase certain stats on your Digimon, stuff like HP, MP, speed, strength, that kind of stuff. I guess the only real issue I have with it is that you really don't find this stuff all that often, and you can go a whole playthrough without really accumulating a lot of this stuff, and the degree to which the Data Keeper seems to be able to increase your stats with this stuff isn't exactly impressive. I did discover later on that if you hold on to this and pool it until you actually Digivolve, it can prove more helpful, but that's really the sort of thing you'd only learn through long-form experimentation through multiple playthroughs, or if someone just told you outright beforehand. All of this left me questioning, okay, so how do you actually go about Digivolving? Turns out you need to unlock certain avenues of Digivolution, often through completing side quests for Digi-Elves you can find at home base. You might think you can take on these missions just by running around to NPCs in the home server and seeing what they need help with, right? Not so much, honestly. For the most part, the Digi-Elves around the server are just kind of here doing their jobs. Most of the other Digimon are just sort of standing there, but you can find at least one that's posing as you and taking credit for your achievements. You can drag him outside, no one will miss him. You really want to visit this one area over here where you'll see a little collection of Digi-Elves who will send you out on different side quests. I actually think these are pretty neat in concept. They'll often reuse the themes of the locations you've explored thus far, but with new goals in mind, like retrieving items or just making it to the end. By completing these, you'll be given a reward from the Digi-Elf that sent you out. The side quest that mattered to me here was the Undead Yard side quest. I'm pretty sure you have to save all the Digi-Elves trapped along Numemon River in Death Valley to unlock this and get to the dry land. You'll be sent into a dungeon fashioned after the dry land area with 30 minutes to run through and defeat every enemy hiding throughout the area. That includes finding hidden rooms tucked away behind destructible walls, killing everything quickly and effectively, and of course, not getting taken out in the process. The reward for completing this quest, the shiny orange carrot hanging on this mummified stick, is unlocking the ability to Digivolve into Were-Garurumon. The problem was that I wasn't strong enough. I simply wasn't mowing through these enemies fast enough to actually complete this quest, or I was getting knocked out, so that meant I needed to pump up my numbers. This is when I started to put together a much better understanding of the game's mechanics, how to effectively level up, and the importance of not only the stats that increase as you level up, but also the skills you possess and how to properly train them. There's a collection of inherent stats that will increase over the course of the game as you gain levels. As I'm sure will feel very natural to most players, as you defeat enemies, they'll drop experience, and the stronger the enemy, the more you'll gain from them. As you accumulate these experience points, you'll rise up in levels and your Digimon stats will increase in turn. You'll be faster, have a larger pool of HP and MP to work with, have greater defense, and increase your attack power. You'll even grow a greater level of defense against certain elemental effects like fire, ice, and lightning attacks. This is the sort of stuff that you would expect would increase as as you grow your character and power yourself up by defeating hordes of opponents. This, by itself, however, is not enough to get you through the game. Increasing your stats is good and all, but a lot of what you're going to be able to do and a lot of what you'll be able to handle is going to be determined by the equipment you carry, and that is not so much affected by the stat that you increase, but by the skills you improve. Skill text will be held in their own menu and will determine what kind of weapons you can equip and what sort of skills they'll have. There are 9 total skill texts, with 6 of them tied to weapon types and 3 determining other abilities your Digimon can use. There will be an assortment of weapons that you can collect throughout the course of your journey by defeating enemies, finding them in chests, getting them as rewards for doing side quests, or delivering keychains to Prince Mamemon, or buying them from shops. You can also sometimes find unknown items and take them to this Digi-Elf over here, who acts as an appraiser of sorts that will identify them and actually let you use it. And not once did I ever get anything useful from them. These weapons will be catered to a specific skill, and while your Digimon will start the game with a couple of weapons to train with, you'll need to gain a certain level of proficiency with that particular skill in order to equip stronger items in that category. Okay, so for example, you might find a weapon under the Crush category that will require your Digimon to be a certain level, but also have 80 or so points in your Crush skill. Well, leveling up is easy enough, we know how that works, so how do you raise your tech points? You'll need to do this by successfully attacking enemies with a certain weapon type over and over again. So to raise your Bash skill, you'll need to equip a Bash weapon and keep attacking enemies with it. A lot. For a good long while, you just won't actually see anything happen here. It takes a lot of attacking, and I mean an absurd amount of attacking over the course of tons of enemies and tons of time to finally see that little tech icon float above your Digimon's head, and then you just gotta keep it going. You need to grind through enemies with that one particular weapon until you've raised 7 of these tech points, and it can take a while. And I'm talking like between 30 minutes to an hour of constant fighting to actually reach this point. I found that this one area in Death Valley with all the Goburimon is a decent place to grind through. Same with this totem in the dry land that keeps spawning an insane amount of these little Scorpion X-Virus enemies until eventually disintegrating until you turn the game off and load it up again. The grind isn't over once you hit this point either. It's more like passing the threshold until this mechanic becomes more tolerable. Once you've gotten somewhere between 7 and 10 tech points within a given skill, you'll start to see the number increase way more often. Sometimes it'll start to increase between every couple of attacks, and it feels like such a relief after how long it took to get to this point. That said, you'll only see that burst of progression for a little while, because after you've raised this stat a bit, you'll eventually stop seeing any tech points coming out of your attacks, and that's because these tech points are capped in a way that you can only gain 30 tech points for any given skill for any one level that your Digimon has gained. I think the base tech points might have a slightly different threshold. The numbers don't quite seem to add up to an even 30 for every level at first, but regardless, after a bit, once you hit that barrier and go into your skill tech screen and see that number turn red, you'll need to farm for experience and level up before you can go raise that skill by another 30 tech points, and this is the only way to build up your character to be able to equip stronger weapons that will help you deal with greater challenges and deal with enemies out there. Given that some of the stronger weapons in the game can require a lot of tech points at a certain skill, like say 2,500 points or so, I'm sure you can see just how much grinding this game expects you to do as the game goes on. And this mechanic isn't just exclusive to equipable weapons either. 3 of these skills, Blast, Heal, and Force, are also tied to this progression system and will require a similar amount of grinding for tech points to power up. The Heal skill is what you expect, allowing you to heal a portion of your HP and using MP instead of relying on items. Blast will allow you to fire off a magic ability like Ice from Dorumon, and Force will let you use a status effect like giving your Digimon a temporary speed buff. These abilities start off pretty basic. You might not even think you're gonna get much use out of them at first, especially with the heal ability not really giving you much HP from the get-go, but I did at least find that using magic as a projectile attack was pretty useful when fighting bosses in the early game. As you continue to spam these abilities though, you'll eventually increase the tech points for their respective skills enough to level up that ability, giving you stronger magic attacks or increasing the amount of health that your healing skill will grant you. Once I was able to level that ability up, I got to a point where I was mostly just healing using MP and almost never used healing items because it was just more efficient, especially since your HP and MP are fully replenished every time you level up in the game. Once I finally started getting the tech point system down, a lot of other mechanics all started to fall into place, but there were still a couple of things that bugged me. For one, there's stuff like how the Numemon River expects you to have a useful and proficient projectile weapon so early on in the game, but if you don't understand the tech systems, like most players wouldn't at this close to the start of the experience, they probably had little to no reason whatsoever to build up any experience with this particular skill, especially since you do have to do an obscene level of grinding to even make it viable for this one minigame that requires the use of guns. It means they either have to learn how that all works right here and go grinding for a while, or just go to this section and try over and over until they're able to master their aim just right to be able to hit the trapped Digi-Elves and free them. I'm pretty sure they, like a few other objects in this game, only require a minimum number of shots to be destroyed and not necessarily a certain level of attack power, but when enemies who do have a set HP get in your line of fire, it kinda negates that little benefit. This isn't the only time the game just sort of throws a weird arbitrary obstacle in your way out of nowhere either. Early on in the Venom Jungle, you'll enter a dungeon and encounter a certain kind of wall that can only be destroyed with a fire effect. Well, my Doraemon's main magic effect is ice, not fire, so that won't be much help here, but what you can do is find a simple weapon that you're able to equip to your Digimon as long as it has a slot available that can be used to apply a special effect from an item. You can go purchase something that will add a fire effect to your attacks with that specific weapon, but not every weapon actually has one of these slots. Not every one that you find can be equipped to your Digimon, and then even if you find one, it's not as simple as just equipping that item right there and then on the field. In the one design choice I absolutely hate and will fight anyone who tries to defend, you have a set inventory of 3 items that you can carry with you at a time. Every other weapon that you pick up needs to just sit there in your inventory while you're out on the field. Defeated an enemy and found a great weapon you want to equip right now and use for the rest of the dungeon? Too bad. You need to find a security hole, use a gate disc, go all the way back to the home server, travel to the next room over, speak to the Digilab attendant, sort through your menus and swap out the weapons that you have in your current active inventory, save your changes, run back into the next room, find the emergency gate to wherever you were, and get back to playing the game properly. It's not like this game didn't already have enough going on that makes the basics of game progression more tedious than they need to be. You already have this insane tech point system barring off what weapons you can use. If I have the stats, I have the skills, and the weapon is on my person, let me equip it. Especially since you have other equipment like boards or armor items that will give you little boosts in HP or defense or increase your resistance to certain elements, and you could just pull these out from your item folder and slap them onto your spicy Tamagotchi. No need to speak to this guy to swap your items around. Man, this is stupid. Once I finally got all of this down, I was able to raise my crush skill enough to equip stronger weapons and try the Undead Yard side quest again, and this time I was finally victorious. I returned to the Digi-Elf and obtained the Were-Garurumon Digivolution. I sought out the Digilab attendant for something that feels way more justified to have a dedicated system like this for, and got ready to get whatever crazy buff was gonna come from my more powerful form, prepared to enjoy the fruits of my labor and wipe out tons of enemies with newfound strength as reward for my hard work. Wait, why are all of his stats so low? It'll reset all my weapons? It'll reset all my skill points? Why? What was the point of all of this? I'm just starting over with a different character model. In the middle of my playthrough, I'm set back to all of my stats at a base level. I can't use any of the weapons I've collected or level grinded to be able to equip. The only thing I have to show for my efforts now is I'm a big wolf man, and that's it. I mean, on second thought, I guess I know some people that would kill for that kind of a breakthrough. All of that hard work and effort to be essentially washed away for the sake of just starting again, but basically naked. What's the point? Why did I even bother going on that quest? Why did I even bother digivolving? Why even have digivolutions at all if you're gonna have so few of them and have them be so useless mechanically? I feel like, logically, it may have been best to just stay as Doraemon and finish the game out that way, but I did challenge myself to go back, go through the grinding, level up, get my Were-Garurumon up to a useful state so that it felt like on at least some small level, this was kind of worth it. If I did get any satisfaction from this point, it was mostly in the sense that now I had a better idea of how to increase my stats and abilities. Now with a better idea of where to find good level grinding spots and already owned the gear I knew I wanted to level back up to. It didn't take as long to build myself back up, but it did still take time, and that still kinda stung. Still, I was eventually able to make it back to where I was, completed the Venom Jungle and all of its bosses, traps, terrible main boss against Elucimon that once again is just way more tedious and time consuming overwhelming than anything resembling challenging, and was ready to move on to the final area. After observing Lucimon's backup data, Ofanimon concludes that the virus creatures we've been encountering, known as the Mecha Rogues, have an original monster that created the X virus. It's responsible for everything that's happened, and now we know where he is. We head off to the machine pit to explore the machine core and take him down. I mentioned it before, but yeah, this is a pretty underwhelming location to have as the final level. The machine pit is just a sort of hub that we've had to go through when we head towards locations for side quests. It's also way more of a straight shot with a little bit of deviation to fight a Crusadermon. We do have a confusing puzzle to solve to unlock the way into the enemy's lair and a gauntlet of Imperial Dramon to face off against, and it's a really repetitive final section of just going back and forth, recycling the same batch of encounters and button pushing until finally making it to the end. Mecha Rogue X is at least a pretty engaging final boss. I'm grateful for that. It's difficult too. I actually lost to this thing like twice, but I wasn't even upset about it. I was happy that this journey was capping off with a battle that really wanted me to tackle it with a set of skills and power that I had accumulated over the course of my playthrough. The way that he splits into multiple versions where you need to defeat the clones and then the original in quick succession before he could just clone himself again was annoying, yeah, but it required a certain level of strategy and it made me pay full attention to the fight. His second phase is more reflex heavy, relying on you dodging or blocking waves of attacks while getting your own hits in while you can. Even dealing with poison damage if you manage to get hit, leading to a battle with a lot to keep track of and a pretty good sense of intensity. The third and final phase gives you an encounter with plenty of scale, attacks to avoid, forcing you to pinpoint the enemy's specific area of weakness. It's cool, it's tough, but it has a great sense of a climactic encounter on a level that feels like it's way above anything that you've dealt with before and feels fitting for a monster that nearly managed to wipe out the digital world. As we leave the battlefield, the credits start to roll. We can revisit the home server in the postgame and talk to our commanders. Serafimon even comments on how he's disturbed that Crusadermon was on the side of the enemy and remarks how troubling it is to imply that the Royal Knights might have a hand in what happened here, which, yeah, that would be rough, imagine that. And the game is done. Or is it? I mean, it is, but I'm sure anybody that's actually played this knows that there's more to the game than just rolling the credits once. One of the aspects I knew I needed to cover for this title was how the game changes once you get friends involved. Earlier in January of this year, I hosted a panel at Super Magfest 2025 called The Wild World of Digimon Video Games, where I discussed Digimon's history in the game industry and different interactive experiences that have come out of it. Now, there were one or two games in there where, sadly, I had not played them myself, and during my synopsis of them, I had to go off of what I was able to assess was the common consensus. When I got to Digimon World 4, I said this.
It's a completely different gameplay style. It's also very poorly balanced if it's just you. You can play with up to 4 people in this game. And it really wants you to. Because if you're going into this with less than that, it doesn't care. It's gonna hit you with the same amount of difficulty regardless. So, bring friends, please.
Now that we're here talking about it today, I would like to go ahead and rescind that statement, because now that I've seen it for myself, I know that adding more people to this experience turns it into a slow, annoying, menu shuffling nightmare. A couple of problems I noted, like areas requiring specific abilities or needing lots of firepower to get through efficiently, can likely be addressed through the multiplayer. Objects that only require a few range shots to destroy are probably cake to get past when 4 people are dual wielding. It's probably really fun running into a dungeon and seeing obstacles that certain players are best catered to take care of, the kind of stuff that builds on a sense of teamwork and cooperation. But what is it really like getting 3 or 4 people together, sharing a screen and venturing forth hand in hand to fight off against the scourge of the X virus? To answer this question, I recruited the help from some of my buddies, Cullen, Mykonos Fan, and K-Bash to hop online through, you know, certain means. You like dolphins? I like dolphins. And we took on the challenge of Digimon World 4 together. It didn't take long for us to run into issues with the emulator, and we needed to change some settings around to make sure that the character models were intact and the frame rate was consistent and playable. From there, it was really just dealing with what the early game does to a party of 4 people when you're constantly having to stop and go run around from the overworld to the home server, swap items around in the menus, talk to the shopkeeper, sell items, buy items, run to the Digilab attendant, make sure that you can actually take the items you want, swap in between the one pause menu into the next pause menu one at a time to check out stats and see what we want to grind for. It takes so long to get anything done, and it only gets worse the more players are present. I don't know if this game ever supported LAN connectivity where everyone could have their own screen, maybe being able to sort through your items and menus and everything without pausing the game for everyone around you might help with the tedium, but that wasn't really an option for us. And of course, I'm not going to give you all that setup without actually showing you some clips from our experience together. Cullen, this is a family-friendly YouTube channel.
Is that good?
That's great, man. Oh, I think boosting the buffer was a good idea because this is already running better. We're gonna see. We're gonna see.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, this is bad.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Oh god.
Oh yes.
This might be unplayable.
I don't think unplayable. It's just gonna be jarring to the eyes.
All I saw was one person go, "Oh my god, it worked!" So who knows?
Oh my god.
Hey,
Oh my god,
it worked!
I can see now why my friend never wanted to play this when I was over.
Just immediately.
I'm already about to die. Do we retain
can't.
like items?
I have to go into folder.
No.
Put it in.
Nope. Nope.
Can't equip it right now.
You cannot equip that right now.
Like
Would
it.
you like to equip that item?
Do I have to go to the weapon Digivolve and say I want to?
All right, follow me.
Oh my god.
Do you want to equip that item you picked up?
Wait, what's happening? Why do I have to go to the plaza in the town next door to equip a weapon I'm holding?
What do you mean? We got to go to the Digilab.
Oh my, the Digilab, my favorite place. This game was great when I was 6 and my parents were fighting all the time.
Does anyone have?
Oh.
I like how it just said something happened. You should go find out.
Wait, how am
Does
I not
anyone
dead?
have any-
I'm at 0 HP. How am I still moving?
I would not question it.
I just wasted a healing item because I'm dead right now.
Use our
is
use
God.
It's not going to do anything.
Wow. Well, yeah, you used it, so that's pretty cool.
I could have given that to you.
I don't. This should not be happening.
Maybe I'll die the next time I'm hit. All right, stay right here. Stay right here.
Yeah, you
Stay
run
right
into
here.
that. Oh,
All right, now I'm dead. Now you can raise me.
this might be the worst possible spot.
It's okay. I'm
die.
alive now.
I like how this could have been like a really fun co-op game, but it's instead a game where one guy leads his friends around like toddlers. Why would you have a jump button in a game without a jump attack? And like, I just don't get it.
Can you imagine if a game like this had instances of platforming?
But, oh no. Wait.
Can you imagine?
Why didn't you know that? You
Why
should
didn't
have
you talk
talked
to
to the fifth Digi-Elf across the hall, down the alleyway, because they would have explained to you that if you talked to 5 more Digi-Elves, you would have known.
Yeah, we can't use that because we left the server, or we left the
You
game.
didn't know that you can't use the emergency gate because you should have talked to Digi-Elf 5 through 19 because they would have told you that if you talked to Digi-Elf 2 down the Death Valley hallway that you couldn't have done that.
Oh yeah, you can do the spin move. What the fuck? Gaming.
Dude, the spin attack sucks so hard in this game.
Oh, what?
Someone used their gate disc.
Did someone use their gate disc?
It was K-Bash.
I'm gonna die.
That other Agumon walking by was like, if it were me, I wouldn't have done it. That's all I'm saying.
Here's 3 paragraphs about why your friends are bad at the game and you are too.
Should I use this stuff?
Hey, long time watcher, first time commenter.
I'm saying.
Still love the content, bro.
Anyway, keep up the good work.
Let's see, how many of these do we have? Let's get a couple of those. Let's get, I don't need cure. Okay, yeah. And just for funsies.
What a video game.
Yeah, your defense is still pretty low because you're like level 1. We gotta try to let K-Bash actually kill a few of these things.
I mean, I'd say that's his fault for like eating dinner with his wife instead of like playing with the boys.
Damn.
K-Bash, you do everything and we sit back and do nothing.
Play Digimon World 4.
No, you gotta level up, boy.
You gotta level up. This is for your own good.
Oh, damn.
There's no crying in baseball.
Fuck.
Get up there and kill!
I'm trying so hard.
No. Let him clear the room.
No.
I'm just helping out a little.
Level
4 of
1.
those are gonna like just turn him inside out.
You said you were able to do it by yourself.
Yeah, but that's. Hang on, you got a point. I wasn't level 1 when I did this.
No, he's level 2 now. He can definitely clear rooms by
God
himself.
damn it.
But you can do it even when it's electro.
No, you cannot. Oh, wow. This is garbage. And this looks like a platforming thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Holy
All right. Actually kills you. All right,
Where's
man.
your respawn thing?
Wait, you're dead?
Oh no!
Mentally, I am this boss right now, and this is what you are all doing to me.
Oh god, he changed his tactic by moving 3 inches to the left.
He's at the bottom of the screen now.
Hope no one dies on the way back.
He's going for. No pressure. You know, it's fine.
Have fun, Chris.
There's save states in this. Just wondering.
Wait, this game sucks hella.
Do you have a... You know, when we go to home base and everybody has the opportunity to buy a bunch of healing items.
Can I get a handout? Do we we don't bump into each other, right?
No, we don't have collision.
Okay.
No! No!
I push it and he doesn't jump.
Yes! This game is so awesome.
Hold on.
I'm just watching this death take place over and over again.
Alright.
Colin! Alright, let's go have a bad time.
I'm really afraid we can somehow fall off this. Oh, wait a second.
It'll be like you actually just can't go for any reason.
What?
Oh, you had to.
Do we have to interact? Could we have done that the whole time?
Wait.
What is the boat key?
Wait, we need a boat key.
Nice. I'm about to. Did you lose it?
We have to
I'm
go.
about to. Did you
Hey
die?
guys, I think we gotta go get a boat key before we can do that.
Is that back at the base?
No.
If you go to talk to the Digi-Elf on the other side of town, yeah, she got a few.
You didn't sacrifice enough Digimon into the big pit. Now, classic solution, you're supposed to dump 20 more Digimon into the big hole.
You and I both have
Someone
the
grab
same
it.
needs. It's okay.
I swear to God, if both of y'all had just... If both of y'all
let
had
it
just
fade away.
played the polite game until it
No,
disappeared.
you insist.
Close your menu. You just wasted your race disc.
Why is this like this? My favorite part is that we do have to do the jumping thing again. at some point.
I know we have to do the jumping thing again. We're taking 5.
Hours to load into the next area. Is it frozen?
Dolphin crashes. Oh god, is it?
No, did it?
Uh-oh.
Oh my god.
We had some fun for sure, but more in spite of the chaos that we were experiencing together. But the way that this game is balanced is fine for throwing more bodies at your problems, but in areas that require precision, with item drops that require you to sort out who gets what, with a limited amount of experience to go around, I mean, God forbid you lose the guy that has all the healing items, and then stack it on top of us just trying to get through this platforming section to get to Numamon River, only to find out that I was forgetting the order of events here, and after spending close to a half hour just trying to get over here together, we found out that we didn't have the boat key needed to go down the river. One of us lost connection and it crashed the entire session and erased the last hour of progress. We we switched to playing Kirby Air Ride together and never attempted multiplayer again. I can see some appeal in this if only you had already raised up some strong Digimon to start with and were able to negate a bunch of the nonsense with getting the game started to avoid a chunk of all this menu swapping, but do you really want to do all of that grinding just to make this tolerable? I can't even imagine trying to get friends together for this when we were kids. We would have gotten tired of this so fast. I'm not sure where the statement started that this game was better with friends and impossibly hard by yourself, but I think all of those people are wrong. There are so many things going against this game, from its tedious execution of its mechanics, to its bare-bones story, its repetitive gameplay, the laughable way that Digivolution is handled. It all just started to become clear to me why everyone was warning me about this game, and why everyone seems to hate it so much. So why do I not hate it? I'm not gonna try to defend this game. There is so much wrong with it. There are so many mechanics that are designed in a way that disrespects so much of your time, and the way these systems are set up should be set up in a way that takes less time to run through all of it, so you'd actually be incentivized to go grinding for more gear, more Digivolutions, other difficulties, stuff like that. I mean, the game expects you to play it multiple times. You beat the game on normal to unlock hard mode, and you beat the game on hard mode to unlock very hard mode, and there are different Digivolutions that are locked behind certain difficulties and changed based on what Digimon you started the adventure with. I actually went through hard mode myself and went through the process to complete the side quest needed to unlock Alphamon, which was just kind of funny in and of itself. You have to start an unrelated quest, go over to an area that is not the quest area, mind you, find a different Digi-Elf who will ask you to drop what you were doing before and go do a quest for him, and you'll need to go grab a certain item, which you can actually just start this by buying a certain type of the item he's looking for, and you don't even have to get it from the quest that he sends you out on. As long as you come back and present him with the right type of weapon, then you're good and you unlock the Alphamon Digivolution. I got him. It was neat, but the appeal of actually getting to use this new form I acquired was dashed by the sheer amount of time it would take to level grind him in order to make him a little bit more useful than just playing the same game again. I stopped before finishing up hard mode. I thought I wanted to unlock very hard mode. I had originally thought it was part of a mandatory checklist of things that I should do if I wanted to say that I really beat this game, but honestly, I think this is the kind of game that you play until you're just done with it. And I was done. And yet, in the midst of everything wrong with this game, despite all the design choices that I absolutely hated, or the systems I thought were undercooked, or the core concepts that could have worked if only the game was paced better to make experiencing it again and again more desirable, I kinda like the way it sucks. I got locked into the monotony. I found some kind of satisfaction in the combat. I actually kind of liked working towards raising certain skills. I honestly really enjoyed the presentation. I think the game looks good, and some of these environments have held up really well over the years. I really liked a lot of the music, and I think that the models for the Digimon themselves look really good, and it's so cool playing a game where I get to see them moving around like this. I would honestly love to see another game try something kind of like this. Maybe something with a heavier emphasis on the action. I've been saying for years that I would love a Digimon Dynasty Warriors spinoff, and I think the X-Virus Saga is a great setup for that kind of title, but I also think that there's still potential here for the dungeon crawling aspects, some of these more traditional RPG systems with the number climbing and gear gathering. There are even some ways this almost feels like an evolution of the direction Digimon World 2 took, but the execution doesn't just leave a lot to be desired, it sort of makes me lament that this game could have been better if it didn't feel like it hated the player so much. On a small scale, for those that are genuinely curious or really wanting to try something chaotic to experience with some friends, I would say this is a memorable time and you'll probably get some laughs. My friends and I sure did, but for the wider audience looking for a legitimately solid experience, sadly, I just cannot recommend Digimon World 4. But I didn't hate it. Well, I'm definitely trying to make up for the lack of content from last year, but we are at a bit of a weird crossroads now. I'm not done talking about Digimon for this year. I mean, we've got Digivices coming out. I have to do a spoiler-free review of Digimon Time Stranger when it releases, but for the sake of my sanity, I am also going to be taking a slight step to the side to take a look at something a little different this year as well. don't you worry, 2026 is going to be full of videos about games from the DS era of the Digimon franchise, and I am excited to look at those, but there's one other project in particular I've been really itching to get to, and I really hope to see you there when it's ready. Of course, until then, remember that my top tier patrons get to see these videos 2 days early. You can find me on Blue Sky, Twitch, Discord, Twitter, whichever you prefer. Links in the description, and of course, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission. And here I thought this was going to be a short one, but it was definitely a very satisfying video to finish up, and I'm very appreciative to anybody that sat around and watched it. This is a video that I thought was going to be a lot quicker to come out, but I am still pretty satisfied with how it came together. I had a lot to say about this one, and I mean, hey, 5 games covered this year across like 3.5 hours of Digimon content. Again, I'll have a little bit more Digimon stuff to share later on this year, but the rest of the major projects for 2025 are going to be a couple of other projects that I am also very excited to put together, although one in particular, just due to the size of it, as much as I hate to say it, we're going to have to see if it's going to be this year or next year, but I would not be able to do any of this if it wasn't for those of you supporting me. If I ever get to do this full time, it'll be because of supporters like the people over on Patreon. Thank you each and every one of you, and I want to give a very special verbal shout out to my current Final Boss patrons. This month they are, and Mr. SP, Brendan Hesse, Dresselite, Earl Valco, Jazzy Jefferson, McKenzel, Milton Manthing, Mitch Pym, Old New Type, Patricia Marcoux, Peter O'Hagan, Cinderin7, Snapkick, and Cirrus the Skeptic. Thank you once again, each and every one of you, so much. You make this possible, and you make it worth it. There's still a lot of work left to do for this year, so no time to waste, time to get to work. See you next mission.